My name is Gina Stone. I'm 30 years old. And after I generously spent $45,000 of my hard-earned money to fund every single aspect of my cousin Sarah's dream wedding reception, because her parents couldn't afford the celebration she wanted, I received a brutal group message from multiple family members 3 days before the event saying, "You can't come. Sarah doesn't want you there," expecting me to quietly accept being excluded from the very celebration that wouldn't exist without my financial sacrifice while they all enjoyed the party I had made possible. What they didn't know was that my generosity wasn't the same as stupidity, and that every vendor contract, every payment system, and every receipt for their dream reception was still under my legal control, which meant their cruel attempt to use my money while rejecting my presence was about to result in the most spectacular and immediate cancellation of a wedding reception that any of them would ever witness, leaving them scrambling to fund their own celebration or watch Sarah's perfect day dissolve into the chaos and humiliation they had created through their heartless greed and breathtaking ingratitude. The decision to fund Sarah's wedding reception had come from a place of genuine love and family loyalty. When I learned that my Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark were facing financial difficulties that would prevent them from giving their daughter the kind of wedding celebration she had dreamed about since childhood. Sarah Martinez, my 26-year-old cousin, had always been like a younger sister to me during our shared childhood in Portland, and I wanted to ensure that her special day would be everything she had envisioned, rather than a scaled-down compromise dictated by her parents' limited budget and financial constraints. "I can't afford the kind of reception Sarah wants," Aunt Linda had confided to me during a family dinner 6 months earlier, her voice filled with the kind of parental guilt that comes from being unable to provide your child with something that feels essential to their happiness and future memories. She's been planning this wedding for 2 years, and she has such beautiful ideas, but the venue costs alone would exceed our entire savings, and that's before we even consider catering, flowers, music, and all the other expenses that make a reception special. The conversation was heartbreaking because Linda and Mark were good people who had worked hard their entire lives, but were facing the kind of financial pressures that affect so many middle-class families, trying to balance mortgage payments, retirement savings, and unexpected expenses while also wanting to celebrate their children's major life milestones in meaningful and memorable ways. Sarah had shown me her wedding planning binders during several family gatherings, and her vision was both beautiful and expensive, featuring an elegant venue with garden views, gourmet catering for 150 guests, extensive floral arrangements, professional photography, live music, premium bar service, and all the sophisticated touches that would create the kind of celebration she had been imagining since she got engaged to her fiancé Miguel 2 years earlier. "I know it's a lot of money," Sarah had said while showing me photos of her dream venue, "but this is the only wedding I'll ever have, and I want it to be perfect for Miguel and me and all our family and friends who will be celebrating with us. I just wish we could afford to make it happen the way we've been planning." The wedding venue that Sarah had fallen in love with was the Garden Pavilion at Riverside Manor, an elegant facility with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking landscaped gardens, sophisticated decor, and the kind of romantic atmosphere that made it one of the most sought-after wedding locations in the Portland area, but also one of the most expensive, with reception packages starting at $25,000 and easily exceeding $45,000 for the kind of comprehensive celebration that Sarah was envisioning. As a successful marketing consultant who had built a thriving practice over the past 8 years, I was in a position to help Sarah achieve her wedding dreams without compromising my own financial security or long-term goals, and I felt that family relationships were important enough to justify making a significant financial contribution that would create beautiful memories for everyone while demonstrating my love and support for Sarah's marriage and future happiness. "What if I paid for your reception as my wedding gift to you and Miguel?" I had offered during one of our planning conversations. "I can afford it, and I want your wedding day to be everything you've dreamed about rather than a compromise based on budget limitations." Sarah's reaction was immediate and overwhelming, with tears of gratitude and disbelief, as she realized that my offer would make her dream reception possible without putting financial strain on her parents or requiring her to scale back her vision to accommodate budget constraints. "Gina, that's the most generous thing anyone has ever offered to do for me," Sarah said, hugging me with genuine emotion. "But are you sure? That's so much money, and I don't want you to feel pressured to pay for something just because my parents can't afford it." The concern in Sarah's voice was touching and seemed genuine, suggesting that she understood the magnitude of my financial contribution and appreciated the sacrifice I was making to ensure her wedding would be everything she wanted, rather than a budget-compromised celebration that might leave her with regrets about what could have been. "I'm absolutely sure," I replied. "Your family, and I want your wedding to be perfect. Let's start planning the reception you really want, and don't worry about any of the costs. This is my gift to you and Miguel as you start your married life together." The wedding reception planning that followed was exciting and collaborative, with Sarah, Miguel, and I working together to select vendors, design menus, choose floral arrangements, and create all the elegant details that would make their celebration both beautiful and memorable for the 150 guests who would be attending their special day. The venue contract for the Garden Pavilion was $18,000 for the Saturday evening reception, including the elegant dining room, garden ceremony space, bridal preparation areas, and coordination services that would ensure everything proceeded smoothly throughout the celebration. And I was happy to sign the contract and make the deposit that secured Sarah's dream location for her wedding. The catering contract with Elegant Affairs was another $15,000 for a 3-course plated dinner with premium menu options, professional service staff, linens, china, and all the sophisticated dining elements that would provide Sarah's guests with an exceptional culinary experience that matched the elegance of her chosen venue and overall wedding vision. The floral arrangements designed by Garden Dreams cost $6,000 and included bridal bouquets, bridesmaid flowers, boutonnieres, centerpieces for 15 tables, ceremony decorations, and all the beautiful botanical elements that would enhance the natural garden setting while creating the romantic atmosphere that Sarah had been envisioning for her perfect wedding day. The live music provided by the Portland String Quartet was $3,000 for ceremony music and cocktail hour entertainment, while the DJ services for dancing and reception entertainment were another $2,000, ensuring that Sarah's celebration would have sophisticated musical accompaniment that would enhance every aspect of her wedding from the ceremony through the late evening dancing. Professional photography and videography services cost $4,000 and would document every moment of Sarah's wedding day, creating lasting memories that she and Miguel could treasure throughout their marriage, while also providing beautiful images to share with family members who would want to remember the celebration for years to come. Premium bar service, wedding cake, transportation, and various other reception details brought the total cost to exactly $45,000, representing a significant financial investment that I was happy to make because I believed that creating beautiful memories for family members was one of the most meaningful ways to use financial resources and demonstrate love and support for people who mattered to me. "Gina, I can't believe how generous you're being," Sarah said as we finalized the last vendor contracts. "This reception is going to be absolutely perfect, and Miguel and I will never forget what you've done to make our wedding dreams come true. You're the best cousin anyone could ask for." The gratitude in Sarah's voice seemed sincere and heartfelt, and I felt good about the financial contribution I was making to ensure that her wedding would be everything she had hoped for, rather than a compromise dictated by budget limitations that might have left her with regrets about what her special day could have been. Have you ever made a significant financial sacrifice for a family member because you wanted them to have something beautiful and meaningful? That's exactly what motivated me to fund Sarah's reception, believing that our close family relationship and shared history warranted this kind of generous support during one of the most important celebrations of her life. The final weeks of wedding preparation were busy and exciting, with last-minute details being confirmed, guest accommodations being arranged, and everyone looking forward to what promised to be a beautiful celebration that would bring our extended family together for Sarah and Miguel's special day. I had taken personal time off from my consulting practice to attend the wedding weekend, made arrangements for professional coverage of my client obligations, and was genuinely excited about celebrating Sarah's marriage while seeing the beautiful reception that we had planned together come to life exactly as she had envisioned it. But 3 days before the wedding, I received a group text message that would shatter my understanding of family relationships and reveal the true character of relatives I had trusted and supported with unprecedented generosity and financial sacrifice. The planning process for Sarah's wedding reception had consumed months of careful coordination and attention to detail, with weekly conversations about menu selections, floral designs, seating arrangements, and all the sophisticated elements that would create the elegant celebration Sarah had envisioned for her marriage to Miguel. And I had been actively involved in every decision while managing all the financial commitments and vendor relationships that were necessary to bring her dream reception to life. "I want everything to be absolutely perfect," Sarah had said repeatedly during our planning sessions. "This is the most important day of my life, and I want every guest to have an amazing experience that they'll remember forever. Thank you so much for making it possible for us to have the reception we really wanted instead of settling for something smaller." The appreciation Sarah expressed during our planning conversations seemed genuine and consistent, and she frequently acknowledged how much my financial support meant to her and Miguel as they prepared for their marriage and the celebration that would officially begin their life together as husband and wife. The vendor relationships I had established were professional and comprehensive, with detailed contracts specifying every aspect of the reception services, payment schedules that I was managing personally, and direct communication lines that ensured I remained informed about all logistics and could address any issues that arose during the final preparation weeks. My relationship with the Garden Pavilion event coordinator Ashley Morrison was particularly close, since we had spent hours discussing Sarah's vision and working together to ensure that every detail would exceed expectations while staying within the overall budget framework that would create Sarah's perfect reception. "Your cousin is so lucky to have someone willing to invest this much in her wedding," Ashley had commented during one of our final planning meetings. "The reception you've designed is going to be absolutely gorgeous, and I can tell how much thought and care you've put into making sure every element reflects her personality and vision." The vendor relationships were not just financial transactions, but collaborative partnerships that had developed over months of planning and preparation, and I felt proud of the beautiful celebration we were creating together for Sarah's special day and the 150 family members and friends who would be attending. But as the wedding date approached, I began noticing subtle changes in Sarah's communication patterns, with fewer updates about wedding preparations, less enthusiasm during our conversations, and an overall sense that she was becoming distant despite the fact that I was funding the entire celebration that would make her dreams come true. "Sarah seems stressed about last-minute wedding details," I had mentioned to my mother during one of our conversations. "But I guess that's normal for brides during the final weeks before their wedding. I'm sure she'll be back to her usual self once the celebration is over and she can relax." My mother had agreed that pre-wedding stress was common and suggested that Sarah was probably just overwhelmed by all the final preparations and would appreciate my continued support and understanding during what could be an emotionally challenging time, even when everything was proceeding according to plan. But what I didn't understand was that Sarah's changed behavior wasn't related to normal wedding stress. It was related to a decision she had apparently made about my role in her wedding celebration, a decision that would reveal her true character and the extent to which she viewed my generosity as an entitlement rather than a gift that warranted gratitude and inclusion. The family dynamics in our extended family had always been complicated by various personalities, old grievances, and the kind of interpersonal tensions that develop over years of shared history, holiday gatherings, and different approaches to relationships, money management, and social obligations. Sarah's immediate family included several relatives who had never particularly liked me, apparently viewing my professional success and financial independence as somehow threatening or inappropriate, and who had made subtle comments over the years suggesting that I was showing off, or trying to make other people look bad, by achieving career success and building wealth through my consulting practice. "Gina always has to be the center of attention," I had overheard my Aunt Carol saying during a family gathering several months earlier. "She can't just let other people have their moments without finding some way to make it about her success and her money." The comment was both unfair and hurtful, since I had never tried to dominate family conversations or make my professional achievements the focus of family gatherings. But it suggested that some relatives viewed my success with resentment rather than pride or support. But I had assumed that funding Sarah's wedding reception would be seen as generous family support rather than as an attempt to control or overshadow her celebration, and I had been careful to let Sarah make all the decisions about her reception while I simply provided the financial resources that made her choices possible. The group text message that arrived 3 days before Sarah's wedding was sent to multiple family members simultaneously and was brutal in its directness and cruelty, revealing not just Sarah's decision to exclude me, but also the support she had received from other relatives who apparently agreed that I should be banned from the celebration I had funded. "You can't come to Sarah's reception," the message stated bluntly. "Sarah doesn't want you there, and we support her decision. This is her day, and she has the right to invite whoever she wants without interference from people who think money gives them control over other people's celebrations." The message was signed by my Aunt Carol, my Uncle David, and my cousin Jennifer, indicating that multiple family members had coordinated to deliver this devastating news while presenting it as a reasonable decision that I should accept without complaint or resistance. The shock of being excluded from Sarah's reception was overwhelming and initially incomprehensible, since I had spent months planning and funding every aspect of the celebration while maintaining positive relationships with Sarah and believing that our family bond was strong enough to withstand any minor tensions or disagreements that might arise. But as I processed the content of the message and began to understand that I was being banned from the $45,000 reception that I had personally funded, I felt a combination of hurt, anger, and disbelief that family members could be so cruel and ungrateful while still expecting to benefit from my financial generosity. "Sarah has decided that your presence would be disruptive to her perfect day," a follow-up message explained. "And since this is the most important celebration of her life, we think she should be able to enjoy it without worrying about family drama or people who might cause problems." The characterization of my presence as potentially disruptive was particularly insulting, since I had been nothing but supportive throughout the entire wedding planning process and had never given any indication that I would cause problems or create drama during Sarah's celebration. But the most shocking aspect of the messages was the casual assumption that I would simply accept being excluded while continuing to fund the reception, as if my financial contribution was an obligation rather than a generous gift that warranted gratitude, respect, and inclusion in the celebration it made possible. Have you ever been told that you're not welcome at an event that you personally paid for while being expected to continue funding it for people who were rejecting you? That's exactly what my family was demanding, that I provide the money while accepting social exile from the very celebration my generosity had created. The follow-up messages from various family members revealed the extent of coordination that had gone into this decision and the unanimous support that Sarah had received for excluding me from the reception while keeping my money and expecting me to remain silent about the treatment I was receiving. "You should be happy that your money is creating a perfect day for Sarah," my cousin Jennifer wrote in a separate message. "This isn't about you. It's about Sarah's happiness. And if you really care about her, you'll respect her wishes and let her celebrate without interference." The suggestion that I should be happy about being excluded from the celebration I had funded was so breathtakingly insensitive that I could barely process the mindset that would lead someone to make such a statement while apparently believing it was reasonable and appropriate. But Jennifer's message also revealed the fundamental misunderstanding that my family had about generosity, gratitude, and the relationship between financial support and social inclusion. They viewed my contribution as a service that I owed them rather than understanding it as a gift that created mutual obligations of respect and appreciation. The response from my family members when I expressed hurt and confusion about being excluded was even more revealing about their character and their attitude toward my financial contribution to Sarah's celebration. "Don't be dramatic about this," my Aunt Carol texted. "Paying for something doesn't mean controlling it. And Sarah has every right to decide who she wants at her own wedding reception, regardless of who provided the funding." The dismissal of my feelings as dramatic, while simultaneously acknowledging that I had provided the funding for the entire reception, revealed the complete disconnect between my family's expectations of my generosity and their willingness to treat me with basic respect and consideration. But Carol's message also contained the key insight that would guide my response to their cruel treatment. She was absolutely correct that paying for something shouldn't mean controlling it, which meant that I was under no obligation to continue funding a celebration that was being used to exclude and humiliate me. "You're right," I responded to the group message. "Paying for something doesn't mean controlling it. So fund it yourselves, parasites." The message was intentionally harsh because I realized that my family's treatment of me was parasitic. They wanted to extract financial benefits from me while providing nothing in return, not even basic courtesy or inclusion in the celebration my money was creating. But my response wasn't just emotional. It was the beginning of a systematic cancellation of every aspect of Sarah's reception that would demonstrate exactly what happened when people took generosity for granted and tried to exploit family relationships for financial benefit, while treating the generous person with cruelty and rejection. The process of canceling Sarah's reception was swift and decisive, involving phone calls to every vendor, immediate reversal of all payments that were still possible to reverse, and cancellation of all contracts that were still within their cancellation periods, effectively dismantling the entire celebration that my family had planned to enjoy while excluding me from their festivities. The first call was to Ashley Morrison at the Garden Pavilion, who was shocked to learn that I was canceling the reception just 3 days before the event and wanted to understand what had happened to cause such a dramatic change in plans. "Gina, is everything okay?" Ashley asked when I called to cancel the venue contract. "We've been preparing for Sarah's reception for months, and all the final details are in place. Is there some kind of family emergency that's requiring you to postpone the celebration?" "There's no emergency," I replied, "but I've been excluded from the reception I'm paying for, so I'm no longer willing to fund a celebration that's being used to reject me. I need to cancel the venue contract immediately." Ashley was understanding and professional, though clearly disappointed about the short-notice cancellation that would affect her staff's weekend schedules and prevent them from earning the income they had been expecting from working Sarah's reception. "I understand your position," Ashley said, "and while this is very short notice, I can cancel the contract and reverse the payment since the event hasn't occurred yet. I'm sorry this situation has developed. It seems very unfair for your family to exclude you from a celebration you're funding." The venue cancellation was processed within an hour, with full refund of the $18,000 I had paid for reception space, coordination services, and all the elegant amenities that would have made Sarah's celebration special and memorable. The catering cancellation with Elegant Affairs was equally swift, though the catering manager expressed concern about the food that had already been prepared and the staff who had been scheduled to work Sarah's reception on what was now a canceled event. "Ms. Stone, I understand your situation, but we've already purchased ingredients and prepared some elements for your cousin's reception," the catering manager explained. "However, since the contract includes a 72-hour cancellation clause, we can cancel the service and refund your $15,000, minus a small cancellation fee for food that can't be returned." Upside, the catering refund was $14,200 after the cancellation fee, but I was satisfied to recover the vast majority of the catering costs while ensuring that Sarah would no longer have the gourmet dinner service that had been planned for her reception. Each vendor cancellation was processed efficiently, with most companies expressing understanding about my situation and agreeing that excluding someone from a celebration they had funded was inappropriate and unreasonable behavior that justified immediate cancellation of services and payment recovery. The floral designer, musicians, photographer, and other vendors were all professional and accommodating, though several expressed disappointment about the last-minute cancellation and sympathy for the difficult family situation that had led to my decision to withdraw funding from Sarah's celebration. "I've never had a situation like this before," the florist said during our cancellation call, "where someone was excluded from an event they were paying for. That seems really unfair, and I don't blame you for canceling the flowers. I'll refund your $6,000 deposit immediately." By the end of the day, I had successfully canceled every aspect of Sarah's reception and recovered $42,800 of the $45,000 I had invested in her celebration, losing only small cancellation fees and non-refundable deposits that were more than offset by the satisfaction of knowing that my family's cruel treatment would have immediate and dramatic consequences. But the most satisfying aspect of the cancellation process was imagining my family's reaction when they discovered that their decision to exclude me had resulted in the complete elimination of the reception they had been planning to enjoy at my expense, while treating me with contempt and ingratitude. The phone calls from Sarah and other family members began within hours of the vendor cancellations, as they started receiving notifications that their reception services had been canceled and that they would need to make immediate alternative arrangements if they wanted to have any kind of celebration at all. "Gina, what have you done?" Sarah called me in a panic. "Ashley Morrison just called to tell me that our venue has been canceled and that you requested a full refund." "This can't be happening. Our wedding is in 3 days." The panic in Sarah's voice was genuine and immediate, as she began to understand that her cruel decision to exclude me from the reception had resulted in the complete elimination of the celebration she had been planning and anticipating for months. "You excluded me from the reception I was funding," I replied calmly. "So I'm no longer funding it. You can have the celebration you can actually afford, which apparently is nothing." But Sarah was still focused on trying to salvage her reception rather than acknowledging the connection between her cruel treatment of me and the consequences she was now facing as a result of her decisions. "But all our guests are coming, and we've been planning this for months," Sarah continued. "You can't just cancel everything 3 days before the wedding. This will ruin our entire celebration." "You ruined your celebration when you decided to exclude the person who was paying for it," I replied. "I offered to fund your dream reception as a gift. But gifts come with the expectation of gratitude and inclusion, not rejection and cruelty." The conversation continued with Sarah becoming increasingly desperate as she realized that her wedding reception had been completely dismantled and that she would need to find immediate alternative arrangements that she could actually afford if she wanted to have any kind of celebration for her 150 guests. Similar calls from other family members revealed their shock and anger about the reception cancellation, but also their continued refusal to acknowledge that their treatment of me had been inappropriate or that they bore any responsibility for the consequences they were now facing. "You're being vindictive and cruel," my Aunt Carol called to tell me. "Sarah's wedding is ruined because you couldn't handle being asked to respect her wishes about her own celebration. Sarah's wedding is ruined because you all thought you could use my money while rejecting my presents," I replied. "But generosity isn't the same as stupidity, and I'm not going to fund people who treat me like garbage." Have you ever watched family members scramble to deal with consequences they created through their own cruel and ungrateful behavior? That's exactly what I experienced as my relatives realized their rejection of me had eliminated the expensive celebration they had been taking for granted. The aftermath of the reception cancellation was immediate and chaotic, with Sarah and her family desperately trying to arrange alternative celebration options that they could afford, while also dealing with the embarrassment of having to explain to 150 guests that their elaborately planned reception had been canceled due to family issues that prevented the original arrangements from proceeding. The vendors who had been hired for Sarah's reception were professional and understanding about the unusual circumstances, but they were also unable to provide services without payment, which meant that Sarah's family would need to find immediate funding sources if they wanted to salvage any kind of celebration from the disaster they had created through their cruel treatment of me. "We're trying to put together a smaller celebration at the church fellowship hall," Sarah's mother Linda called to tell me. "But we need at least $5,000 for basic catering and decorations. Would you be willing to contribute something to help Sarah have some kind of reception? The request for continued financial support, after excluding me from the celebration, was so audacious that I was initially speechless, unable to comprehend the mindset that would lead someone to ask for money from a person they had just rejected and insulted. "You excluded me from the reception and called me a controlling parasite," I replied. "And now you want me to fund your backup celebration? The answer is absolutely not. Fund your own reception with your own money." But Linda continued to plead for financial assistance, apparently believing that I should contribute to Sarah's celebration regardless of how I had been treated, and that my hurt feelings shouldn't prevent me from supporting family members who needed my help during their crisis. "This is still Sarah's wedding day," Linda continued, "and she's your cousin. Can't you put aside your hurt feelings to help her have some kind of celebration, even if it's not the elaborate reception you originally planned?" The suggestion that I should put aside my hurt feelings while providing financial support to people who had deliberately hurt me revealed the complete disconnect between their expectations and their treatment of me. And I realized that they genuinely believed I owed them financial support regardless of their behavior. "Linda, you excluded me from my cousin's wedding reception after I paid $45,000 to make her dreams come true," I said. "And now you want me to pay more money to help fix the disaster you created. I'm done being your family ATM while being treated like an unwelcome outsider." The conversation ended with Linda expressing anger and disappointment about my refusal to provide additional funding, apparently viewing my decision as selfish and vindictive rather than understanding it as a natural consequence of their cruel and ungrateful behavior. Sarah's wedding reception ultimately took place in the church fellowship hall with folding tables, potluck-style food provided by family members, decorations from the dollar store, and a playlist instead of live music, creating the kind of modest celebration that matched what her family could actually afford without my financial contribution. Our reception was simple, but filled with love, Sarah posted on social media afterward, apparently trying to put a positive spin on the dramatic downsizing of her celebration, while avoiding any mention of the circumstances that had led to the change in plans. The social media posts about her simple but love-filled reception were a far cry from the elegant celebration we had planned together, and I felt satisfied knowing that Sarah's decision to exclude me had resulted in exactly the kind of scaled-down reception that my original generosity had been intended to prevent. But the most satisfying aspect of the entire situation was learning that several family members had been forced to contribute money they didn't have to fund Sarah's backup reception, creating financial strain and stress that was entirely the result of their decision to reject the person who had been willing to pay for their celebration. "We had to put the fellowship hall rental and basic catering on credit cards," I heard through other family members. "And now we're dealing with debt we can't afford because we needed to help Sarah have some kind of reception." The financial difficulties that my family faced as a result of losing my funding were appropriate consequences for their cruel and ungrateful behavior, and I felt no sympathy for people who had created their own problems through their treatment of someone who had only tried to help them celebrate an important family milestone. The $42,800 that I recovered from the canceled reception vendors was money that I put toward my own dreams and goals, rather than continuing to subsidize family members who viewed my generosity as an entitlement, rather than understanding it as a gift that warranted gratitude, respect, and inclusion. I'm using the money I recovered from Sarah's canceled reception to fund a 3-week vacation in Europe, I told my mother during one of our conversations several months later. "It's something I've wanted to do for years, and now I have the resources to make it happen." The European vacation was everything I had dreamed it would be, with luxury accommodations, amazing food, cultural experiences, and the kind of personal enjoyment that was far more satisfying than funding a celebration for people who had treated me with cruelty and rejection. But the most important lesson I learned from the entire experience was that generosity should be reserved for people who appreciate and value it, rather than being wasted on family members who view financial support as something they deserve regardless of how they treat the person providing it. The relationship damage caused by Sarah's decision to exclude me from the reception I funded was permanent and irreversible, with several family members continuing to maintain that I had been wrong to cancel the reception even after they had acknowledged that excluding me was inappropriate and hurtful. You could have been the bigger person and continued funding the reception even after they excluded you, some relatives suggested, apparently believing that being the bigger person meant accepting cruel treatment while providing financial benefits to people who had rejected me. But I had learned that being the bigger person doesn't mean enabling bad behavior or accepting disrespect from people who expect continued generosity while providing nothing in return, and that setting boundaries with entitled family members is necessary for maintaining self-respect and preventing future exploitation. As I reflected on the year following Sarah's wedding disaster, I realized that the most valuable thing I had gained wasn't the money I had recovered. It was the clarity about which family relationships were worth maintaining and which relatives viewed me as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be valued and respected. The family members who had supported Sarah's cruel decision to exclude me while expecting me to continue funding her celebration had revealed their true character, and I was better off understanding their priorities and limitations rather than continuing to invest emotional and financial resources in relationships that were fundamentally one-sided and exploitative. I don't miss the stress of trying to please family members who were never satisfied with my generosity, I told my mother during one of our discussions about the lasting impact of Sarah's wedding situation. And I'm much happier focusing my time and money on relationships with people who actually value and appreciate what I bring to their lives. The friends and chosen family members who had supported me during the wedding crisis had proven themselves to be far more worthy of my generosity and trust than the relatives who had taken my financial support for granted while treating me with cruelty and rejection. If you're reading this and you're dealing with family members who expect your financial support while treating you poorly or excluding you from celebrations you're funding, please know that you have every right to withdraw your generosity when it's not appreciated or when it's being used to manipulate or control you. Generosity is a gift that should create positive relationships rather than enabling entitled behavior, and people who exclude you from joy you've created are showing you exactly how much they value your presence versus your money in their lives. Sometimes the most self-respecting thing you can do is refuse to fund people who don't want you around, allowing them to discover what their celebrations look like when they have to pay for them with their own resources rather than taking your financial contributions for granted. Family relationships should be based on mutual respect and appreciation rather than one-sided financial support, and relatives who view your success as an obligation to fund their dreams while rejecting your presence are revealing that they value your money more than they value you as a person. Setting boundaries with entitled family members isn't cruel. It's necessary for maintaining healthy relationships, where generosity is appreciated rather than expected, and where your presence is valued rather than tolerated in exchange for financial benefits. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share your experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had family members exclude you from events you were funding or treat your generosity as an obligation rather than appreciating it as a gift? How did you handle situations where relatives expected your financial support while treating you with disrespect or rejection? Your story might help someone else who's dealing with similar family dynamics and needs to understand that generous people deserve gratitude and inclusion rather than exploitation and exclusion. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that your generosity should be reserved for people who value your presence as much as they value your financial support, and that excluding someone from celebrations they've created reveals the true nature of family relationships and priorities. See you in our next story here on Her Sweet Revenge.